Picture this. It's the middle of the 18th century. The British Empire is, without a doubt, the global superpower. We're talking a colossal force of wealth and military might. But way across the Atlantic, in these 13 colonies that look pretty small in comparison, a radical idea is starting to catch fire.
And this, right here, really lays out the mismatch. I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got the British Empire. They have the world's strongest navy, period. Their army is made up of professionals, career soldiers who are trained to a T, and they're backed by a global empire's treasury. And on the other side, well, you've got the 13 colonies. It's a loose collection of farmers and merchants. They have no navy to speak of, and their supplies are severely limited. It's the ultimate David versus Goliath story.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling in this explainer. How on earth did this happen? How did a band of rebels, of farmers and tradespeople, manage to stand up to, and in the end actually defeat, the most powerful empire on the planet? Well, to get to the answer, we have to go back to the very beginning, to that first spark. Because this whole thing didn't kick off with some grand call for independence. Nope, it started with something way more relatable, a fight over money. See, Britain was basically drowning in debt after the French and Indian War, which was incredibly expensive. Parliament's big idea to fix it? Tax the American colonies, and they started with the infamous Stamp Act. This tax felt so personal because it wasn't on some far-off import. It was on everyday stuff. We're talking legal documents, newspapers, even a deck of playing cards. It hit everyone, from a lawyer in his office to guys playing cards in a tavern. But here's the thing. For the colonists, it wasn't just about the cash. The real issue, the principle of the matter, was this. They had 0 elected representatives in the British Parliament that was dreaming up these taxes. And that single idea gave birth to one of the most powerful rallying cries in history. It became a fight for a voice, for the basic right to have a say in the laws that ruled their lives. And from that point on, boy, things escalated fast. Just look at this timeline. By 1770, tensions boiled over into the Boston Massacre. 3 years later, you get the Boston Tea Party as a protest against a new tea tax. And Britain's response? It was swift and harsh. They passed what the colonists called the Intolerable Acts, which basically shut down Boston's harbor and put Massachusetts under military rule. Things were at a breaking point. So, what began as a simple protest over taxes had morphed into full-blown resistance. The colonies were now teetering on the edge of war, getting ready to fight for their survival against an enemy that, on paper, they had absolutely no chance of beating. And that edge was crossed on April 19, 1775. British troops marched out to seize a rebel arms cache, but they were met by colonial militiamen. A shot rang out, these shot heard around the world, and just like that, the Revolutionary War had begun. Soon after, the colonies pulled together and appointed George Washington to lead their brand new Continental Army. Now, by the next year, the goalposts had completely moved. This wasn't about fighting for their rights as British citizens anymore. Oh no. Written by Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence was a total break. It declared the colonies to be entirely new, free and independent states, all built on this revolutionary idea that people have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But declaring you're independent and actually winning that independence are two very different things. The first few years of the war were just disastrous for the Continental Army. At Valley Forge, Washington's troops were starving, freezing, and losing. Thousands of men died, not in battle, but from disease and exposure. The whole revolution was hanging by a thread. And then, right when it seemed like all was lost, one single event happened that offered this incredible glimmer of hope. It changed the entire course of the war. That event was the Battle of Saratoga. In what was just a stunning turn of events, the Continental Army surrounded and forced an entire British army to surrender. This was so much more than just a win on the battlefield. It was a huge psychological victory. It proved to the world, and maybe more importantly to the Americans themselves, that their ragtag army of volunteers could actually go toe-to-toe with the most professional fighting force on Earth and win. Saratoga was the key that unlocked everything. You can see how it played out. First, that victory proved the colonists were for real. That in turn convinced France, Britain's old enemy, who was still pretty sore about losing the last war, to officially jump in as an American ally. And that one move completely leveled the playing field. All of a sudden, the Continental Army had access to the French Navy, French money, and French troops. It was a total game changer.
All right, so now they're armed with a powerful new ally, and their morale is sky high. The Continental Army set out to deliver the final decisive blow.
The stage was set at Yorktown, Virginia in 1781, and the British Army, led by General Cornwallis, walked right into a perfect trap. Washington's army had them pinned down by land, while the French Navy sailed in and cut off any chance of escape or reinforcement by sea. They were completely boxed in. Surrounded, outmaneuvered, with nowhere to go, General Cornwallis had no choice. He surrendered his entire army. And while a few small fights would continue, the surrender at Yorktown was it. That was the end of the war. Against all odds, the colonists had actually won. So what was the legacy of this completely impossible victory? Well, it was nothing less than the birth of a whole new kind of nation. A couple years later, the Treaty of Paris was signed, and that made it all official. Great Britain formally recognized the United States of America as a free and independent country. It was now on the world map. But the impact just echoed way beyond North America. The American Revolution essentially created a brand new blueprint for democracy. This radical idea that a people could actually overthrow their king and govern themselves based on liberty and natural rights, well, that idea would go on to inspire countless other movements for independence all across the globe, from France to Latin America. It all leaves us with this one final powerful question. The American Revolution really shows what can happen when an idea, the simple idea of freedom, becomes more powerful than any army. And it really makes you wonder, what is it about a belief that inspires people to fight for it, even when the odds seem completely